Have you ever looked at someone who walks for an hour every single day and wondered why they still struggle with stubborn belly fat? Maybe you've experienced it yourself. You committed to longer walks because everyone told you that if 30 minutes burns calories, then 60 or 90 minutes must burn even more fat. At first, it seems perfectly logical. Walk longer, burn more calories, lose more belly fat. End of story. But what if that story is incomplete? Imagine two neighbors who begin a walking routine at the same time. The first person walks briskly for 30 minutes every morning before work. The second person proudly walks for nearly 90 minutes every afternoon. After several months, something unexpected happens. The first person's waist becomes noticeably smaller. Their energy improves. Their blood sugar stabilizes. Meanwhile, the second person is frustrated. They are spending 3 times as much time walking, yet their belly fat barely changes. How is that possible? Does this mean walking doesn't work? Not at all. It means that the human body doesn't burn fat according to a stopwatch. One of the biggest misconceptions about exercise is believing that the body simply counts minutes. We imagine that every additional minute automatically melts more fat. But your metabolism doesn't think like a calculator. It behaves more like a sophisticated biological control system, constantly making decisions based on hormones, energy availability, blood sugar, stress levels, sleep quality, muscle activity, and even what you ate several hours earlier. This is why two people can take the same number of steps and experience completely different results. Many people focus almost entirely on calories burned because fitness trackers display those numbers so clearly. You finish a walk, glance at your watch, and see that you've burned 400 calories. It feels productive. Naturally, the next thought is simple. If 400 calories are good, then 600 must be even better. But burning calories and burning belly fat are not exactly the same thing. Your body has multiple fuel sources available at any given moment. It can burn glucose circulating in the bloodstream. It can use glycogen stored in your muscles and liver. It can burn fatty acids released from fat tissue. Which fuel it chooses depends on far more than the duration of your walk. This is especially true when it comes to visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat surrounding your organs. Visceral fat is not simply passive storage. It responds constantly to hormonal signals, particularly insulin and stress hormones. If those signals tell your body to hold on to stored energy, walking longer doesn't automatically override them. In fact, under certain conditions, walking for too long may actually become less effective than a shorter, smarter walk. That sounds almost unbelievable, because we've spent years hearing the phrase, "More exercise is always better." But biology often rewards efficiency instead of excess. Think about sunlight. A healthy amount helps your body produce vitamin D. Too little isn't beneficial, but too much can damage your skin. Water keeps you alive, yet drinking excessive amounts in a short time can be dangerous. Sleep restores your body, but sleeping 15 hours every day usually isn't healthier than getting 8. Movement follows a similar principle. There is a point where additional walking continues, providing benefits for cardiovascular fitness and endurance. But the extra minutes may not produce proportionally greater belly fat loss. Sometimes those extra minutes simply increase fatigue. Sometimes they increase hunger. Sometimes they elevate stress hormones. Sometimes they encourage you to reward yourself with extra food afterward, unknowingly replacing every calorie you just burned. The real question isn't, how long should I walk? The better question is, when does walking send the strongest signal for my body to access stored fat? Because that signal, not the stopwatch, is what ultimately shapes your metabolism over weeks and months. In today's journey, we're going inside the human body, minute by minute, to discover why longer isn't always better, why hormones matter more than most people realize, and why one intelligently planned walk may accomplish more than 2 hours of aimless exercise. Once you understand how your metabolism actually works, you'll never think about walking the same way again. To understand why walking longer does not always burn more belly fat, we need to begin with one simple truth. Your body does not have only one fuel tank. At any moment, your body can use glucose from the blood, glycogen stored inside the muscles and liver, fatty acids released from fat cells, and even small amounts of amino acids when necessary. Walking may look simple from the outside, but inside the body, it creates a constant negotiation over which fuel source should be used first. When you first begin walking, your muscles need energy immediately. If you recently ate a meal, especially one rich in carbohydrates, glucose is already available in the bloodstream. Your muscles can pull that glucose in and burn it quickly. If blood glucose is not enough, your muscles can use glycogen, which is stored carbohydrate inside muscle tissue. This is why the early part of a walk often relies more heavily on sugar-based fuel. As the walk continues and your breathing becomes steady, your muscles begin using more oxygen. This is important because fat requires oxygen to be burned efficiently. Fat oxidation works best when the activity is moderate enough that your body can keep up with oxygen demand. That is one reason walking can be so powerful. It is usually gentle enough to keep your body in an aerobic state, where fat can gradually become a larger share of the fuel mix. But here is where many people misunderstand the process. Fat burning is not controlled only by time. It is strongly influenced by hormones, especially insulin. Insulin is the hormone that rises after eating, particularly after meals high in refined carbohydrates or sugar. When insulin is elevated, the body is generally in storage mode. It is not impossible to burn fat when insulin is present, but high insulin makes it harder for fat cells to release stored energy. This means that a person can walk for a long time, but still mostly burn the glucose that is already available, especially if they walk soon after a high-sugar meal or spend most of the day with elevated insulin. They may burn calories, but that does not guarantee they are pulling deeply from belly fat stores. Now let's talk about belly fat specifically. Belly fat is not all the same. The soft fat under the skin is called subcutaneous fat. The deeper fat packed around the liver, intestines, and other organs is called visceral fat. Visceral fat is more metabolically active, meaning it releases inflammatory signals and responds strongly to hormonal changes. It is closely linked with insulin resistance, fatty liver, high triglycerides, and unstable blood sugar. This is why belly fat is not just a calorie problem. It is also a hormonal and metabolic problem. For the body to reduce visceral fat over time, it needs repeated signals that stored energy is safe to release. These signals include lower insulin, steady oxygen supply, improved muscle glucose uptake, better sleep, lower chronic stress, and consistent daily movement. Walking helps with many of these signals, but only when it is done in a way the body can recover from. This is where walking too long can sometimes backfire. For some people, especially beginners, people under chronic stress, people who are sleep-deprived, or people who are eating too little, a very long walk may become a stressor rather than a helpful signal. The body starts the walk calmly, but after too much duration, fatigue builds. Cortisol, one of the body's stress hormones, may rise. Cortisol is not always bad. It helps mobilize energy. But when cortisol is repeatedly elevated, especially in people who are already stressed, the body may become more protective of belly fat. Another issue is compensation. A long walk may burn more calories during the session, but it can also increase hunger later. Many people unconsciously eat more afterward, move less for the rest of the day, or crave quick carbohydrates because the body wants to restore energy. They may feel they earned a snack, a sweet drink, or a larger dinner. Without realizing it, they replace the energy they just spent. There is also the problem of intensity. Walking longer often causes people to slow down too much. A very slow stroll still has benefits for circulation, mood, and joint movement, but it may not create a strong enough metabolic signal to improve insulin sensitivity or increase fat oxidation meaningfully. In many cases, a brisk 25 to 40-minute walk does more for glucose control and muscle activation than a 90-minute walk done at a very lazy pace. This is why we need to think in terms of effective walking. Effective walking is not about punishing the body. It is about creating the right internal conditions. Muscles actively pulling glucose from the blood, insulin gradually becoming more sensitive, oxygen delivery remaining steady, stress staying low, and fat cells being encouraged to release stored energy. When walking creates that environment, it becomes one of the most powerful tools for reducing belly fat over time. But when walking becomes excessive, poorly timed, too slow, or followed by overeating, longer duration does not automatically mean better results. The body is always asking one question: What signal am I receiving? A smart walk tells the body, use energy efficiently, improve glucose control, release stored fuel, stay calm. An excessive or poorly planned walk may tell the body, you are under stress, conserve energy, increase hunger, recover quickly. And those two signals can produce very different results, even if both people spent time walking. This is why the next question matters so much. What actually happens inside your body, minute by minute, during a walk? And where is the most useful window for belly fat metabolism? Imagine that you step outside, lace up your shoes, and begin walking at a comfortable but purposeful pace. Nothing dramatic happens during the first few steps. Your body doesn't suddenly flip a switch and begin burning belly fat. Instead, a carefully coordinated sequence of events begins unfolding inside you, almost like an orchestra gradually coming together. During the first 5 minutes, your heart starts beating a little faster. Your breathing becomes deeper, though still comfortable. Blood vessels supplying your working muscles begin to widen, allowing more oxygen and nutrients to reach them. Your nervous system recognizes that movement has begun and immediately starts preparing your body to produce more energy. At this stage, your muscles rely primarily on glucose already circulating in the bloodstream, along with small amounts of glycogen stored inside the muscle fibers. This is the quickest source of fuel available. Think of it as using the cash already sitting in your wallet before going to the savings account. By the time you reach the 10-minute mark, something even more interesting begins happening. Muscle contractions themselves start helping remove glucose from the bloodstream. Remarkably, they can do this even with less reliance on insulin than when you're sitting still. Tiny transport proteins called GLUT4 move toward the surface of muscle cells, allowing glucose to enter more easily. This is one of the reasons walking is so effective for blood sugar control. Every step acts like a small pump, encouraging muscles to absorb circulating glucose. The pancreas doesn't have to work as aggressively because your muscles are actively helping clear sugar from the bloodstream. Between 10 and 20 minutes, your cardiovascular system settles into a steady rhythm. Your heart has adjusted. Your breathing becomes more efficient. Oxygen delivery improves. This is when your body begins shifting toward greater fat oxidation. Notice that we are talking about percentages, not an on-off switch. Fat has been contributing from the beginning, but now it becomes a larger share of the fuel mix. As oxygen remains plentiful, fatty acids released from adipose tissue become increasingly valuable as an energy source. At the same time, insulin sensitivity begins improving. This doesn't mean permanent changes happen in a single walk, but every session reinforces your muscles' ability to respond more effectively to insulin afterward. Over weeks and months, these repeated improvements contribute to better metabolic health. Now you reach the 20-minute mark. For many people, this is where the walk becomes especially productive. Your muscles are fully warmed up. Your joints move more freely. Blood circulation is efficient. Oxygen supply is stable. Your nervous system is no longer reacting to the start of exercise. It has settled into a sustainable rhythm. Between 20 and 40 minutes, many metabolic experts consider this one of the most effective windows for brisk walking. Your body continues using both carbohydrates and fat, but fat oxidation often reaches a highly efficient level without creating excessive physical stress. This is also when many people experience mental benefits. Walking rhythmically lowers nervous system tension, stress begins fading into the background, creative thinking often improves, mood-enhancing chemicals like endorphins increase gradually, while the repetitive movement helps calm the mind. For individuals trying to reduce visceral fat, this period may provide the ideal combination of muscle activity, glucose regulation, hormonal balance, and manageable stress. But what happens after 40 minutes? Contrary to popular belief, the benefits do not suddenly disappear. If you're well rested, properly nourished, physically fit, and enjoying the walk, continuing beyond 40 minutes can still improve cardiovascular health, endurance, circulation, and calorie expenditure. However, the relationship is no longer perfectly linear. The first 40 minutes often produce the strongest metabolic return for the average person. Beyond that point, additional benefits continue, but they may increase more slowly than the time invested. Between 40 and 60 minutes, individual differences become much more important. A trained walker with excellent recovery may continue benefiting without difficulty. Their muscles remain efficient, their heart rate stays moderate, and their body continues using fat effectively. Someone who slept poorly, skipped adequate nutrition, or is carrying significant chronic stress may experience something different. Fatigue begins appearing. Walking pace naturally slows. Cortisol may gradually increase as the body works harder to maintain energy. The quality of movement may decline even though the walk continues. Then comes the point many people assume is always beneficial: walking beyond 60 minutes. Can this still be healthy? Absolutely, but only when it matches the individual's recovery capacity. For hikers, endurance athletes, or people who genuinely enjoy long walks, an hour or more can be perfectly appropriate. Their bodies have adapted to this workload. For many beginners, however, the extra 30 or 40 minutes may produce surprisingly little additional benefit for belly fat. Instead, it may simply increase fatigue, joint discomfort, or hunger later in the day. Some people finish a 90-minute walk feeling so hungry that they consume several hundred extra calories without realizing it. Others spend the remainder of the day sitting because they're exhausted, reducing their overall daily movement. This phenomenon is called compensation. The workout itself was productive, but the body's response afterward reduces much of the advantage. That is why successful fat loss rarely depends on one heroic workout. It depends on sending the same healthy metabolic signals again and again. A brisk 30-minute walk performed consistently 5 or 6 days every week often creates stronger long-term adaptations than occasional marathon walks followed by days of inactivity. Your metabolism loves consistency. Every walk teaches your muscles to use glucose more efficiently. Every walk reminds your blood vessels to stay flexible. Every walk encourages better insulin sensitivity. Every walk reinforces healthier communication between your brain, liver, pancreas, and fat cells. The body does not remember your single longest walk. It remembers the signals you repeat. And as those signals accumulate over weeks and months, they begin transforming not only how much energy you burn, but how every major organ works together to manage fat, blood sugar, and overall metabolic health. By now, you've seen that walking is much more than a way to burn calories. Every step sends messages throughout your body, and over weeks of consistent walking, nearly every major organ begins adapting. These changes don't happen because you walked the farthest. They happen because your body repeatedly receives the right metabolic signals. Let's begin with your muscles. Most people think muscles simply move the body, but metabolically they are one of your greatest allies. During a brisk walk, muscle contractions pull glucose out of the bloodstream and into muscle cells, where it can be burned for energy or stored as glycogen for later use. This process helps lower blood sugar without requiring the pancreas to release large amounts of insulin. Over time, healthier muscles become more efficient at handling glucose. That means after meals, blood sugar doesn't need to rise as dramatically because your muscles are prepared to absorb it. This is one reason regular walking can improve insulin sensitivity, even if weight loss is slow. Next comes the liver. The liver is responsible for balancing blood sugar, storing glycogen, processing nutrients, and regulating fat metabolism. When blood sugar repeatedly spikes throughout the day, the liver often converts excess glucose into fat. Over months and years, this contributes to fatty liver and increased visceral fat. Walking, especially after meals, changes this process. As your muscles remove glucose from the bloodstream, less glucose reaches the liver all at once. The liver no longer has to deal with the same overwhelming surge of nutrients. Instead of being forced to convert excess glucose into fat, it can maintain a healthier balance between storing and releasing energy. Now consider the pancreas. Every meal challenges the pancreas to produce exactly the right amount of insulin. Large blood sugar spikes require large insulin responses. Frequent spikes mean the pancreas works harder every day. Regular walking helps reduce this burden. As muscles become more effective at absorbing glucose, the pancreas often doesn't need to release insulin as aggressively. The result is a smoother hormonal response after meals and, over time, improved metabolic flexibility. Then there are your fat cells. Fat cells are not passive storage bags. They constantly listen to hormonal messages. When insulin remains elevated, fat cells tend to hold on to stored energy. When insulin gradually decreases and energy demand remains steady, Fat cells become more willing to release fatty acids into the bloodstream. This is exactly why consistency matters more than duration. One extremely long walk cannot undo weeks of poor metabolic health. But repeated daily walks gradually teach the body that stored fat can safely be used as fuel. The brain also changes. Many people begin walking because they want to lose weight, but they continue walking because they notice something unexpected. Their mind feels clearer. Their mood improves. Stress becomes easier to manage. Walking stimulates blood flow to the brain and helps regulate stress hormones. It also encourages the release of endorphins and other neurotransmitters associated with emotional well-being. For many people, this reduces emotional eating, one of the biggest obstacles to long-term fat loss. Healthy blood vessels benefit as well. Every step increases circulation, improving the function of the thin inner lining of blood vessels known as the endothelium. Better circulation allows oxygen and nutrients to reach tissues more efficiently, while supporting cardiovascular health. Although you can't see these changes in the mirror, they are among the most valuable benefits of regular walking. Eventually, these internal improvements begin appearing in everyday life. You may notice that climbing stairs feels easier. You recover more quickly after physical activity. Your energy remains steadier throughout the afternoon. Your waist measurement slowly decreases, even if the scale changes only slightly. After meals, you no longer feel overwhelmingly sleepy. Hunger becomes more predictable, making it easier to maintain healthy eating habits without constantly relying on willpower. But many people unknowingly make mistakes that reduce these benefits. One common mistake is believing that slower and longer is always better. Walking so slowly that your heart rate barely changes may feel relaxing, but it may not provide enough stimulus to meaningfully improve glucose handling or insulin sensitivity. Another mistake is walking while severely sleep-deprived. Poor sleep raises cortisol and reduces insulin sensitivity before you even take your first step. Walking is still beneficial, but expecting it to completely overcome chronic sleep deprivation is unrealistic. Many people also reward long walks with oversized meals or sugary drinks. They genuinely believe they deserve the extra calories after exercising. Unfortunately, this compensation often replaces much of the energy they just used. Ignoring protein is another common error. Walking creates a demand for muscle maintenance and repair. Without adequate protein, especially as we age, preserving lean muscle becomes more difficult. Since muscle is one of the body's most important glucose-regulating tissues, neglecting it makes long-term metabolic health harder to achieve. Some people walk intensely once or twice a week and remain sedentary for the other 5 days. The body responds far better to consistent daily signals than to occasional bursts of effort followed by inactivity. Poor posture can also reduce walking efficiency. Looking down at your phone, slouching forward, or taking very short, hesitant steps limits natural movement and can increase discomfort over time. Perhaps the biggest mistake of all is believing that success is measured only by minutes. Walking 90 minutes while exhausted, stressed, and constantly hungry may be less effective than walking 35 minutes with good posture, steady breathing, quality sleep, and balanced nutrition. The body doesn't reward the longest walk. It rewards the healthiest environment. And that's exactly what we'll focus on next: how to build the smartest walking routine for long-term belly fat loss without spending endless hours on your feet. So if walking longer isn't always the answer, what is? For most people, the goal should be to walk smarter, not simply longer. A practical starting point is a brisk walk lasting between 25 and 40 minutes, performed 5 or 6 days each week. Your pace should feel purposeful. You should be breathing a little harder than normal, but still able to hold a conversation without gasping for air. This moderate intensity creates an ideal balance between energy use, oxygen availability, and sustainable fat oxidation. Timing also matters. If your primary goal is improving blood sugar, a 10 to 20-minute walk after meals can be remarkably effective. Your muscles immediately begin pulling glucose from the bloodstream, helping reduce large post-meal blood sugar spikes. If your goal is improving metabolic flexibility, a morning walk before breakfast may work well for some people, especially if they feel comfortable exercising before eating. However, this is not a requirement for fat loss. The best walking time is the one you can repeat consistently. An evening walk can be equally valuable. It helps reduce stress after a busy day, supports digestion after dinner, and may reduce the urge to snack late at night. Walking becomes even more powerful when combined with other healthy habits. Eat enough protein to preserve lean muscle. Include strength training 2 or 3 times each week to maintain the muscles that help regulate blood sugar. Prioritize quality sleep, because no exercise program can fully compensate for chronic sleep deprivation. Choose mostly whole, minimally processed foods, and manage stress whenever possible. When these habits work together, your body becomes far more efficient at using energy. Walking is no longer just an exercise. It becomes a daily conversation with your metabolism. So remember the most important lesson from today's journey. Your body doesn't measure success by how many minutes you walk. It responds to the quality of the signals you repeat every day. A smart 30-minute walk that improves insulin sensitivity, lowers stress, activates your muscles, and fits naturally into your lifestyle will almost always outperform an exhausting 90-minute walk that leaves you hungry, fatigued, and impossible to sustain. Belly fat is influenced by hormones, blood sugar control, muscle health, sleep, recovery, and consistency. Walking supports every one of these systems, but only when it becomes a habit rather than a punishment. Here's a simple challenge. For the next 30 days, stop chasing longer walks. Instead, focus on walking with purpose. Track your waist measurement, your energy, your sleep quality, your cravings, and how you feel after meals. You may discover that the biggest improvements happen long before the number on the scale begins to change. The goal is not to walk until you are exhausted. The goal is to walk in a way that teaches your body to use fat more efficiently. If you enjoyed this science-based explanation of how the human body really works, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that more exercise is always better. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.